Hi everyone. So if you've clicked on this video, then I guess you're looking for some answers. An answer to a very difficult question, that is, why is India not picking sides in the Russia-Ukraine war? More specifically, if you're from the West, you're wondering why India is not picking the side of Ukraine uh, publicly, clearly, when it is so obvious that Ukraine wasn't the aggressor. First of all, let me just apologize for the messed up aspect ratio of this video, because I'm recording from my phone and I don't have a phone holder or whatever that is. So I apologize for that. Secondly, let me just express my deepest condolences to the people in Ukraine, innocent people, and the soldiers, of course, who have lost their lives because a war has been imposed upon them. I'm as shocked and heartbroken and devastated as anyone after watching the horrific killings that had happened in Bucha and all through Ukraine ever since the war began. So, and I pay my deepest respect to the brave people of Ukraine who have shown immense courage and determination and demonstrated sheer bravery in front of an overwhelmingly larger military force. And of course, they had help from the Western world in terms of ammunition and in terms of, I'm sure, medical supplies as well. But the Ukrainians have demonstrated what real courage is all about. So, having said that, I think, and this may be very difficult to understand for a Ukrainian who is going through the most horrendous period of their lives, but you have to look it in perspective. What I mean is, when it comes to India's stand on the Ukraine-Russia issue, if you just look at India's voting patterns in the UN, where India has not picked any side, please note that we have not picked Russia's side. We have abstained, and time and again we have emphasized on the point that India respects and advocates for diplomacy and dialogue. Over and over again, India's permanent representative to the United Nations has stated that there should be an immediate halt of hostilities, and territorial integrity should be of paramount importance. So I'm paraphrasing here, of course, but what we are advocating is that territorial integrity should be respected. Now, when we say that, whose territorial integrity are we talking about? It's Ukraine's. So now you might ask that why this wishy-washy statement, because it does sound like wishy-washy in the on the outset, right? Well, this is where you need to go back to history, and I don't expect any Ukrainian to understand this at this moment, because you're going through a different crisis. My message is actually to people in the West who have been disappointed, angered, frustrated with India's position, and the Western media, their commentators, if this message is reaching them, my message is for them. You see, quick history lesson, and I'm not going to delve into dates and events, but just a quick context here, I would say, is that after World War II ended, the world basically divided into three groups. So you had the first world, which were the capitalist, so most of West. You had the second world, which were the socialist, headed by Russia, the Soviet Union, and then you had the third world. This set of countries did not pick sides, and these countries included India, and as far as I can recall, there was Egypt and probably Indonesia. So, India is one of those countries which actually pioneered the non alignment movement. So, we were neither with the United States nor with the Soviet Union. We wanted to be, wanted to chart independent independent path for our newly independent nation. You have to know that India gained its independence from the British Empire in 1947, and the British left India in a very, very dire economic and social condition. The country was absolutely drained of its resources after 190 years of British rule, and it was time to build the country. So we couldn't afford to uh, pick sides and choose hostility of either the United States or the Soviet Union. So at the time, it was a very sensible decision. However, as time progressed, India and Pakistan, because of a different reason, which we can get into at a later video, found themselves at loggerheads with each other, and the United States at that time partnered with Pakistan. So it provided Pakistan with diplomatic support and aid and military alliance and everything. So when a power like the United States supports Pakistan, then India did not really have a choice other than to join the Soviet camp. So on paper, even though we were neutral, India came into the orbit of the Soviet Union as Pakistan came into the orbit of the United States. Now, this is where the India-Russia relationship begins. At the time, it was Soviet Union, but after 1991, it became primarily Russian. So, one of the most important things that happened, I think most Westerners, journalists might know, but I think the general populace do not know, is that in 1971, India and Pakistan fought a bloody war, and what basically happened was that until 1971, which is what is now currently Bangladesh, used to be a part of Pakistan. So it was known as East Pakistan, and the Pakistan that you know used to be known as West Pakistan, because it was in the west of India, and Pakistan was in the west of India, and East Pakistan was in the east of India. So East Pakistan was populated and continues to be populated by ethnic Bengalis, whereas West Pakistan continues to be populated by Punjabis and Sindhis, uh, uh, Patha- Pathans. Okay, they're different ethnic groups. So Pashtos, sorry. So different ethnic groups. So the West Pakistan, its leaders did not have any kind of respect for the East Pakistanis and tried to impose their language, West Pakistan's lingua franca, if you will, Urdu, upon the East Pakistanis, the Bangladeshis now, and the East Pakistanis were Bengali speaking people, so they did not adhere to that, and Pakistan started brutally oppressing the East Pakistanis, and one thing led to the another, and India had to step in. And in the month of December in 1971, India and Pakistan formally went to war. India won the war and liberated East Pakistan, which is now Bangladesh, and Pakistan had to suffer a humiliating defeat, and 93 Pakistani soldiers unconditionally surrendered. In that war, I think it would surprise many Westerners to know that the United States, the UK, they completely supported Pakistan. You see, United States at the time, it was President Nixon's administration, and President Nixon just so happens to be one of the most anti-India presidents that the United States ever had. And I'm not saying this because out of any kind of spite or anything. It's on record. I mean, he had the choicest words for Indian women. I mean, if you can if you want to Google it on or watch a clip on YouTube, I think you will find it. And President Nixon had a very visceral kind of hatred for India because India is mostly populated by Hindus who are not, well, to him it was, pagan religion, false people, dirty and everything. Whereas he had a lot of love for Pakistan because at least Pakistan was Muslim, so it was adhering to an Abrahamic faith. So President Nixon uh, had this idea that United States and Pakistan could be allies because they kind of follow the same god, if you will. So um, President Nixon, what happened in 1971 was when India went into East Pakistan to fight the West Pakistanis who were occupying the area, the United States uh, mobilized its 7th Fleet to attack India. And at that time, Russia came into India's assistance. They created a blockade, and the United States and Great Britain's navy couldn't reach India, and Russia basically said to the United States that if any country, if they attack India, then it will be considered as an attack on Russia. So that was very crucial at the moment why India won a victory against Pakistan and liberated Bangladesh. So fast forward to 1999. Uh, so from President Nixon's administration till Bush 41, President George Bush Sr., and then President Clinton, up until this point, India and the United States relationship was really fraught because President uh, Clinton did not have a very favorable view of India. However, things changed when President George W. Bush came into the picture, because if you go back in history, you would see that in 2008, I believe, or was it 2006, wherever, in between 2006 2008, one of the two, India and the United States signed civil nuclear agreement. So what basically means that India, because it's not a signatory of the NPT, Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, India couldn't get nuclear material, couldn't import nuclear material, but this civil nuclear deal allowed India to import nuclear material for civilian purposes, so we could build nuclear power plants and all that. So that breakthrough, which was a very big breakthrough in India-US relation, that paved the way for further, more deeper engagement between India and the United States. And after his tenure, George W. Bush's tenure, came President Obama, and in his tenure and through President Trump and now President Biden, India and US's relationship has only been more stronger, has gone stronger. But Russia, you see, because historically we were dependent on Russia, Russia continued to be a major supplier of defense equipments to India. So most of India's defense arsenals, military gear, if you will, is of Russian origin. So this is very crucial to understand, because if we are to antagonize Russia, then it's a huge possibility that they would stop supplying the necessary parts to maintain our current fleet of aircrafts and everything. Now you might say that why don't we just buy from the US or any other Western country? Well, we do buy some stuff. We have over the last 10-15 years, we have accelerated purchasing from the United States. We have tried to reduce our dependency on Russia, but the legacy military hardware that we have, so Su-30, MKI, Su-30s and MiG-29s, we need spare parts for those, and we need maintenance. We need to send them to Russia for maintenance and all that. Plus, and it's not just the Air Force. I mean, the Indian Army uses a lot of Soviet-made tanks, so the T-90 or the T-72. So it's a huge range of engagement with Russia, and those military hardware cannot be just replaced overnight. So even though I agree that Western platforms, weapon systems are much more technologically advanced as compared to Russian, it has not been the case that we could buy them because our relationship was so fraught. Although we did buy a lot of French military hardware over the years, because France, unlike other Western countries, doesn't really toe the US foreign policy. So we have a very independent relationship with France, nevertheless. So when you look at from that perspective, it's very hard for India to publicly go against Russia when it comes to the Russia-Ukraine war. Now, I have been hearing this lot of India is on the wrong side of history. I'm sorry. India is not in the wrong side of history. Every country, every government, the first and foremost responsibility of a government is to ensure that their national interests are being secured. And right now, our national interest, because remember, we have two hostile nuclear power nations, China and Pakistan. Right now, our entire focus is to be ready to protect ourselves from any kind of hostile attack from China or Pakistan. So our military needs to be ready, needs to be alert. So we can't have any kind of compromise with the preparedness. So even after that, this is the whole situation. So we can't really go against Russia because our military dependence on Russia plays a major role in the Russia-India equation. You can call it dependency because it is dependency. And this dependency will not go away quickly. And this dependency will not go away just by smearing India. You have to understand India's position. As for Russian oil, well, India buys less than like 2% of its entire oil, like yearly oil import from Russia. So we mostly import from Middle Eastern countries. But I don't want to get into whataboutery, but a lot of European countries are still, as of today, continue to buy Russian oil and gas, and they are not being lectured by the Western press or the Western commentary yet. So there's something to look at. So India right now cannot jeopardize its relationship with Russia because we have significant dependency on that country. And quite frankly, we wouldn't want that kind of dependency on the United States as well. What is the way forward is what the government is doing is the government of India, I'm talking about, is emphasizing on indigenization. So we are trying to indigenize as many weapon platforms as possible. Now, we can't indigenize everything. It's not possible. No country is able to do so. Even the United States imports a lot of military hardware, parts and all that to assemble in the United States, but they do sometimes import, but because you can't make everything in your country. That's not how it works. So we would continue to have dependency, but we would going to try to reduce this dependency in the next 20-30 years. We are trying to increase our level of indigenization in military hardware. So that's that. So taking that into consideration and looking from that angle, you have to understand that India, even though I'm sure we have expressed our disdain and discomfort with Russia's action to the Russian authorities privately. We cannot do so publicly because in international diplomacy, and I'm not diplomat or a higher international relationship expert, but in international diplomacy, you don't really rebuke or you don't really express your discomfort about a nation with which you have a very which you have amicable ties publicly. You don't do these things public. You don't berate a country publicly. You protest privately because that's more effective. When you do it publicly, the other country becomes defensive. If we think about it, as important as it may look, all the sanctions, I'm sure they're going to have devastating effects. They already have devastating effects on Russia, but there are some symbolic victories that are trying to be achieved, like suspending Russia from the UN Human Rights Council. I understand why people wanted to do that, but what impact would it really have? None whatsoever. So if India abstains from such a vote where the impact is minimal, I don't think that it's fair for other countries to judge India. So to answer your question, why India is abstaining, well, India is abstaining because India has to take care of its own interests first. And I know that this sounds very selfish, but countries don't really run on emotions. People can afford to be emotional. Public can afford to be emotional. Even the press can afford to be emotional, but not diplomats, not politicians. So with that understanding, again, I express my deepest condolences to the victims of the war in Ukraine, and I sincerely hope that as India's position is, and as an Indian, I would want Russia and Ukraine to return to dialogue and diplomacy and solve this issue on the table, not on the battleground. And in that effort, if India can play a role in mediating it, then I hope that the Indian government is up to that, as I'm sure it is. So, with that said, thank you for listening, and I hope you have a little bit of understanding why India chose to abstain. Share it with your friends. Please make people aware, because the kind of smear campaign that's going on against India is frankly unjustified. Thank you.